Hi everybody, Matt and Paul here from Fiduciary Wealth, and we come to you today with a very quick video. And this is just some common questions for those moving to Gibraltar. Nothing too technical today, but this is a lot of questions that we encounter on a day-to-day basis. And we'll just run through this very quickly for you. So Paul, I'm going to start off. So this is me asking you, okay, I'm a UK national. Can I just come over and move to Gibraltar?
Well, I mean, in theory, you can move over, but whether you get residency or not is a different matter. The fact that you can move doesn't mean that you can obtain residency, right? Because there's certain criteria and conditions that have to be met. But there's different routes to tax residency. The employment route, the self-employment route, HEPS, if you've got some specialist skills, category to individual. Yeah, so I mean, of course, you can become it, or if you're a British national in receipt of UK state pension, you can transfer your NHS medical rights to the Gibraltar Health Authority, and that in itself is exclusive for British nationals who've reached retirement age. And that in itself can trigger residency, but there's a process to go through, and you can't just show up and stay in Gibraltar and become tax resident without following, a standard procedure. I think we've found in the past few weeks, following the treaty and agreement, that people who've been here below the radar are starting to wake up. In some cases, I think Matthew had one which was 3 years, and sadly he wanted to legitimize. Well, look, you can't do that. You can't just come and there's a consensus. I know that they do go, inspectors go and knock on doors and check out and no, yeah. So yes, you can move, but no, you can't just move and think that because it's a British territory, there's nothing to do. You just show up and that's it. Each case is different, but if there's anyone out there who's living in Gibraltar without having registered and done it properly, then they should really reach out.
Good.
So how do you gain residency, Matt?
Okay, thanks, Paul. I think you've covered the majority of that, but really, you need to apply for residency with the government, which is a process that we will help you with. So we won't tell you all our secrets. But really, the answer is similar to yours, Paul. To summarize, there are 4 routes to residency in Gibraltar. Okay, you can be employed in Gibraltar. That's inclusive of the kind of HEP scheme. You can be self-employed in Gibraltar. That has to be legitimately self-employed. You will probably find a video that we've already recorded on this one. You can be under the Category 2 scheme, which is for high net worth individuals. You can be a UK state pensioner and you transfer your rights to Gibraltar. There are different processes to gain residency depending on which route you go via. There are different kind of steps. The process for residency is relatively lengthy. We're finding, depending on the route and depending on your circumstances, it's taken around 3 months now from start to finish for a residency application. Of course, you can live here while your residency is going through, but as kind of Paul said earlier, you need to legitimize your residency, so you need to start that process straight away. But if you want to gain residency, either if you're already here or you're on your way, then reach out to us and we'll help you through the process.
Thank you, Matt.
Next question. This is one I get quite a lot, Paul, actually. So how long do I need to stay in Gibraltar? So I think this is maybe people are thinking, okay, I like the idea of Gibraltar, but really they maybe want to be in the EU. So how long do I need to stay in Gibraltar, presumably to remain a tax resident in Gibraltar?
Good question. I mean, the higher benchmark is 183 days, which is I won't say universal, but it's pretty much the standard across many different countries. You have to spend 183 days or more to be a tax resident, or an option which is a less onerous requirement is 300 days over 3 consecutive tax years. So effectively, 100 days or more could be sufficient to trigger residency. That doesn't mean that you do not trigger residency in a third country if you spend, you go to France and you spend 8 months a year. Well, notwithstanding the fact that you've been in Gibraltar 101 days every year, you're going to get challenged. So with a caveat that applies to Gibraltar, but that doesn't shield you from anywhere else if you break the rules in that country in terms of what constitutes tax residency. But yeah, for those who want to limit their stay, 100 days or more every single year could be enough, is enough to be considered quite legitimately tax resident in Gibraltar.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul.
So I have a question for you, Matt. A lot of Brits do decide to go back to UK. How many days even if they don't go back to the UK, how many days can they return to the UK?
Okay. Yeah, we do get this one quite a bit. I guess people relocating, but they still want to see family. They have business interests. The answer to that one is it depends on your individual circumstances. When we exit the UK, the number of days we can return is based on what we call the UK statutory residency test. And when we're talking about this, we're talking about tax residency. So normally people come here, they want to go back to the UK, but you don't want to trigger tax residency. So that's assessed by the UK statutory residency test and is based on the number of ties that you have to the UK. These are, do you have UK-based family? Do you have work interests in the UK? Do you spend more time in the UK than any other country? Have you spent more than 90 days in the UK in the last 2 years? And do you have accessible property in the UK? And based on those answers, that will tell us how long you can spend in the UK in any given tax year. Generally, from what I see is when we exit the UK, there's a restriction on the number of days. And then the further we, off on the UK, we've obviously spent less time there. Maybe we've got less property there and things like that. You can spend more. Normally in the first year, it's between kind of 45 and 90 days, but again, depends on your situation. If you're thinking that, okay, I can leave the UK and still go back for kind of half a year in that first year, that's going to be pretty unlikely. It is quite possible if you sell up everything and you're basically just returning as a tourist and you only stay in hotels, but it's pretty unlikely. So it's going to be a lower bar than that. But again, when we are processing residence applications, as you know, Paul, this is one of the things that we guide people through this process. I mean, it's important to note. I know there's some companies, they're processing your residency case. They say, okay, here's the paperwork. We do that. That's not how we work. We want to make sure, people do things properly and you receive the advice along that. So this is something that we can run through and do run through with our clients. So Paul, I've got a last question for you.
Yeah.
And this question is a bit like kind of how long is a piece of string, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So what taxation will I pay as a Gibraltar tax resident?
It depends on your sources of income. And if it's a UK pension you transferred into a QNOPS, you only pay 2.5.
Oh.
If you set up a QNOPS or similar arrangement, you only pay 2.5. There's no capital gains tax. There's no wealth tax. There's no inheritance tax, but you're subject to, if you have a UK national, to UK inheritance tax for a while. Income tax is capped at 25, I think it is. So no more than 25. Corporate tax is now, I think, 15%.
Yeah.
But I think what you'll find is that it's incredibly tax efficient. So no capital gains, no wealth tax, no inheritance tax, no VAT. So generally speaking, when it comes to tax, it's a pretty benign tax environment and very interesting for anyone looking to relocate.
Yeah. Generally, the answer to that question is, especially Brits, what taxation will I pay? I think the answer usually is less, but it obviously depends on their situation, like you say.
No, of course, and your investments, you can structure them as pensions. Then you pay 2.5%, which in my opinion is more like a slap on the wrist than taxation, which people don't even budge when you say 2.5. Well, that's fantastic. 2.5, or you can structure it in such a way that it's it's an offshore bond, and because it works as capital gains, or generally speaking, there should be no tax in Gibraltar either. So there's different ways of restructuring to optimize your tax position. And yes, if it's a UK company paying you a UK dividend, there's no tax either. It's worth mentioning.
No, very good point. Yeah, very good point. Wonderful. Okay,
Good.
well, Paul, thank you for that,
Thank
and
you.
hope that was helpful for those who are watching. We have more videos coming. They're more on our YouTube channel, so please share these with your friends. Please subscribe and like your favorite videos. Feel free to leave us some comments as well. For those who are moving to Gibraltar and would like our expert guidance, reach out to Paul and I. We'll be happy to talk to you, and we take it from there. But for now, thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
And goodbye,
Thank you,
everybody.
Matt.
Bye-bye.
Bye.